The Earth is already one giant ball of mystery, but there are jaw-dropping facts most people have no clue about. Want to casually drop a fact like how there's a waterfall taller than Angel Falls that only a few people will ever see? Or that there's a spot on Earth that can best be reached by someone floating in space? Well, get ready to have your mind blown. I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 geography facts that'll make you sound like an expert who's traveled the world. You've probably dreamed of visiting the world's tallest waterfall, maybe Angel Falls in Venezuela, but if you had checked with a geography expert before packing, you'd have ended up deep in the Atlantic Ocean instead. Why? Because the tallest waterfall on Earth isn't on land at all. It's underwater. That's the Denmark Strait Cataract, a massive underwater waterfall tucked between Greenland and Iceland. This underwater ridge is a whopping 11,500 feet. That's like stacking 3 Angel Falls together. So, what's going on down there? Arctic water is super cold and heavy, and when it flows south and meets warmer Atlantic water, it sinks hard. And it sinks right over the Denmark Strait Cataract Ridge, making it a proper waterfall. Now, with that height and volume, you'd expect a roaring rush, but it falls at just 1.6 feet per second. Slow, cold, and utterly wild. On the surface, it might not look like much, but down below, well, a whole lot is going down. But if you think that's strange, hold on, I am just getting started. Ever wondered if nature, like humans, has a split personality? Hurricanes sure seem to. In the northern hemisphere, they spin counterclockwise, but go south of the equator, and they flip the script, spinning clockwise instead. Why don't they all follow the same pattern? Well, it's because of the Coriolis effect. As the Earth spins, anything moving across its surface, like air, gets gently nudged off course. In the north, that nudge sends storms swirling one way. In the south, it pushes them the other. So in the end, it's actually all physics. Or you could say it's like nature's very own hemisphere-specific choreography. And speaking of spinning, here's another head-spinning fact. Where does Santa retire to after a busy Christmas? Well, kids who believe in him say it's the North Pole. But if Santa were real, he wouldn't have a cozy little home at the North Pole. Why? Well, there's no land there. Yeah, that's right. It's all ice floating on the Arctic Ocean. Unlike Antarctica, which has a solid landmass, the North Pole is practically one huge ice sheet that expands when the months are cold. And when the summer heat comes in, it shrinks to about half its size. To add to this, from September to March, the North Pole experiences total darkness. This is called polar nights. So while Santa's reindeer might be magical, the North Pole isn't exactly the best spot for setting up a shop. No land, no light, just lonely ice and endless night. But if you think that's lonely, buckle up. Let's go to a part of Earth so isolated, the closest humans to it are floating in space. If you've ever wanted to be totally cut off and out of reach, there's one place that gives you exactly that. I'm talking about a spot on Earth where the closest people to you are astronauts in space. No kidding, no joke. No other human gets anywhere near it. It's a point in the middle of the Pacific, over 1,450 miles from any land in any direction. Officially, it's called the Oceanic Pole of Inaccessibility. And get this, it is 34 times bigger than France. That sounds intense, right? Yeah, because it is. Point Nemo is quite literally in the middle of nowhere. Nemo in Latin? Well, that means no one. So how are astronauts the closest people to it? Think about it. When you're over 1,500 miles from another human being and the International Space Station flies at just 300 to 400 miles overhead, do the math. And yeah, your nearest neighbor is in orbit. Chances are you won't be going there, so here's another fact to memorize for trivia night. If you have a fear of heights, just standing next to a 5-story building can make your palms sweat. But nature has its own way of cranking up that fear, and it's Mount Thor on Baffin Island, Canada. This mountain is Earth's greatest vertical drop, going down an insane 4,101 feet. That's like falling off the entire height of the Burj Khalifa, with plenty of time to reconsider all your life choices before you hit anything. But then, this isn't even the tallest mountain, so how does it get such a massive drop? Well, unlike most mountains that have a sloped descent, Mount Thor has a nearly perfect vertical line, dropping straight down from peak to base. If you were to jump off, it would take around 26 seconds before you land on anything. Now, let's shift gears and head southeast to France, where another jaw-dropping geography fact awaits. Most countries stay loyal to one continent, but France, it said non merci to that. Instead, it went on a global shopping spree, planting flags on 6 of the world's 7 continents like it was building its own world tour. It all goes back to the age of empires. Back in the colonial era, France was in full empire building mode. After World War II, many former colonies gained independence, but some opted to stay linked to France as overseas departments and territories. So, from French Guiana in South America, islands in the Caribbean, North America, Réunion and Mayotte near Africa, to the Pacific holdings like New Caledonia and French Polynesia and Oceania, and even Adelaide Land in Antarctica, France's reach is as global as it gets. A country that sorta hits select all on the world map. But I am just getting started. From a country on several continents, let's head to the land of borders, because the longest one in the world lies between 2 countries you might not expect. Okay, before I jump into the next strange fact, here's something that's not weird, illegal, or banned in 6 countries, but it is one of the most surprising, useful tools I've come across lately. This is fume. And no, it's not a vape, not just a trend, it's flavored air. Simple as that. And I have to say, it's one of the smartest ways I've found to replace the habits that are tough to break. I know, it's just a click, but when you're sitting at a desk for hours trying not to reach for your phone every 5 seconds, little things like this make a difference. It doesn't do anything fancy. No vapor, no nicotine. You just draw through it, and that's it. But it works, and it keeps your hands busy and your brain from spinning out. I started with orange vanilla when I first got one, and it's still one of my go-tos. But lately, I have been switching it up with spearmint ice. It's got that cool, clean taste that kind of resets your brain a bit. And hey, if you're someone who's all about cinnamon hearts or, black licorice, I've got nothing but respect. You have bold taste, my friend. Fume's discreet and incredibly travel-friendly. You don't have to charge it. You don't have to explain it. You just use it. And honestly, I use mine all the time. Right now, if you grab the Journey Pack using my code LIST25, they'll throw in a free topper too. This awesome thing. Just go to tryfume.com/list or scan the QR code you see on your screen. All right, let's get back to the next strange fact or gadget or whatever, because actually this one thoroughly surprised me. I look sophisticated. When you think of a border, you probably picture a tight, tense line guarded like a secret. But the US-Canadian border? It's more like a neighborly nod across a massive backyard. At 5,525 miles or 8,891 kilometers, it is the largest international border in the world. That's longer than a round-trip road trip from New York to LA, with a couple of snack breaks and sightseeing detours. But it gets interesting. Despite its size, the US-Canada border has few armed patrols, just lakes, forests, and small towns. It weaves through 13 US states and 8 Canadian provinces and territories, cutting across everything from snowy wilderness to remote mountains. Some say it's the longest undefended border in the world, but that's mostly because it's compared to the United States-Mexico border, which gets a lot of drama. But you want to know what else Canada has in store for us? If asked to name a desert, chances are you're going to say Sahara, and your mind pictures dry ground with scorching heat, sand dunes, and maybe a camel or two. But plot twist, the largest desert in the world isn't even hot at all. It's frozen solid and covered in ice. That's Antarctica. How does that make sense? Well, a desert is any region that gets very little moisture, usually less than 10 inches of rain or snow a year. And guess what? Antarctica matches that criteria a little too perfectly. And so, with a size of about 5.5 million square miles, it's officially the largest desert in the world, bigger than the Sahara by a long shot. Now, let's leave Antarctica behind and dive into the Pacific, straight into the deepest place on Earth. If you took Mount Everest and flipped it upside down, then dropped it into the Pacific Ocean, into the Mariana Trench, you still wouldn't have filled up the Mariana Trench. Let that sink in for a moment. This spot was first found in 1875 during the Challenger expedition, a mission to map the oceans. Back then, they used the old school method, tossing a weighted rope into the water. At least 5 miles deep, they'd figured they'd hit the bottom and left. But in 1951, sonar revealed the real story. It wasn't just deep, it was the deepest place on the planet. The trench is a scary 36,070 feet. That's almost 7 miles down. Its deepest point is called the Challenger Deep, and it's so remote, so pressure-packed, it's basically Earth's version of outer space, just colder, darker, and underwater. We've sunk nearly 7 miles beneath the sea. Now let's climb out of the trench, step onto land, and head for one place where Earth reaches up to brush the edge of space. If aliens were to beam you up to their spaceship and needed the closest point to space to pick, where do you think they'd choose? Well, it's not Mount Everest. The perfect spot will be Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador, the closest point to space on Earth. But Chimborazo isn't the tallest mountain, so how did it earn that title? Well, here's why. You see, Earth isn't a perfect sphere. It's slightly squished at the poles and bulges at the equator. And Chimborazo almost sits right on that bulge. So when you measure from the center of the Earth, Chimborazo sticks out farther than Everest ever could. That makes it the highest mountain on Earth by that measure, and the peak nearest to outer space. It's the kind of place where you can literally say you are on top of the world. Standing there high above the Earth, just a little closer to the stars, you don't just feel like a hero, you feel like the final shot of an epic movie. Now that I've hinted at Earth's shape and how it's more of a squash sphere than a perfectly round ball, let's look into another fascinating detail about how this spinning globe of ours behaves. You've probably been taught in science class that the Earth spins on its axis, but that's not the complete truth. Earth doesn't just spin, it wobbles too. Remember spinning a globe as a kid and watching it wobble off course? That's basically the same idea, except Earth's wobble happens incredibly slowly. This slow shift is known as axial precession. Just like it takes 365.25 days for Earth to complete its revolution, a full wobble cycle takes about 26,000 years to complete. Over time, Earth's axis drifts about 4 inches per year. It may not sound like much, but after a century, that's 11 yards. While this wobble doesn't mess with your day-to-day life, it affects things like the North Star's position and Earth's climate over long periods. Now, since I'm on the topic of slow, sneaky movements happening beneath your feet, here's another fact that just might help you win trivia night. You ever skip trimming your nails for a while and suddenly you just felt like Wolverine? Hopefully not. But your fingernails aren't the only things growing at a snail's pace unnoticed. The continents are too. That's right, they're slowly drifting apart about the same rate as your nails grow, about 1 to 2 inches per year. But before you start panicking, rest assured this is a super slow process. So your favorite beach isn't going to disappear tomorrow. But over millions of years, this adds up to some serious changes. So if you had a map of Earth with a time-lapse camera watching it over millions of years, you'd see continents drifting apart or crashing into each other, forming mountain ranges and new ocean basins. Alright, it's time to switch things up a bit. You started watching this video looking for geography facts to make you sound like an expert. Well, I did the thorough work and research, and so far, you've gotten 12 solid ones. I think I deserve a sub for that, yeah? Go ahead, hit that bell button. Thank you guys so much. Now, let's get back to it. Here's another geography fact to blow your mind. If you've ever seen The Hobbit, then you definitely remember Smaug, the fire-breathing dragon in a cave piled high with gold. Well, it turns out Earth might just out-hoard that dragon. Our planet has its own secret treasure stash. And here's where it gets wild. Scientists estimate there's so much gold hidden deep inside Earth that if we could get it all, we could literally coat the entire planet in a shiny layer of golden armor. Right now, we know about 244,000 metric tons of gold in the Earth's crust. But some geologists think there's way more, like 1.6 quadrillion tons buried in the core. And that's a quadrillion with a Q. So even if we only had access to the known stash, Earth could still get a full-on golden glow-up. I'm telling you, Smaug would be jealous. Now how about a fact that'll make you sound like a nerd when you get to say it? Ever wonder what it'd be like if every day was like summer? Constant sunshine, no clouds and no rain? I mean, sounds perfect, right? But eventually you'd crave a break from the heat and start missing the rain. Well, far away at the bottom of the globe in Antarctica, there's a place where it hasn't rained or snowed in over 2 million years. Yes, the dry valleys. While the rest of Antarctica is covered in ice, this region's land has also stuck to the extreme, remaining totally dry. There's been no rainfall at this location in 2 million years, which means that there hasn't been any precipitation in the dry valleys at any point since humans existed. Stuff like this really makes you appreciate where you are on the planet. Let's move on from that to another surprising fact. If you were told you had over $1 million, but in your entire lifetime you'd only get to spend about $7,000, that would kill the joy real quick, right? Now imagine that same disappointment, but with water. About 71% of Earth's surface is covered in water, but only 0.007% of it is actually available for human use. That's it. The rest? Either saltwater in the oceans or locked away where we can't touch it. To take it even further, of all that water on Earth, only 2.5% is fresh water. And even then, the vast majority of that is stuck in glaciers, ice caps, or buried deep underground. In the end, less than 1% of that 2.5% is easily accessible. So while it may seem like we're swimming in abundance, the reality is that what we're working with is much like a handful of sand when there's an entire beach. For the next fact, let's go to the one place where water is not scarce. It's a full-on deluge, like Noah's Ark level of downpours all over again. If you ever wondered what the biblical flood might have looked like on replay, Mawsynram, India, gives you a pretty solid preview. This little village is the wettest place on Earth, and I'm being as literal as I can. On average, Mawsynram gets drenched by around 467 inches of rainfall every year. That's not just a lot, that's absurd. Imagine the rain stacking up to the height of a 4-story building. Yeah, it's that serious. But if you think that's extreme, 1985 said, "Hold my cloud." Mawsynram clocked in at over 1,000 inches of rainfall. That's more water than New York, London, and Tokyo combined get in a whole year. If you stepped out, you wouldn't need an umbrella, you'd need an ark. Still feels distant? Well, on June 17th, 2022, Mawsynram received 1,003.6 millimeters of rain in just 24 hours. That's like a month's worth of rain from 10 cities falling all at once on one tiny village. We've had enough rain to sink a city. Now let's dry off and pack up, because we're leaving the floodplains of Mawsynram to travel roughly 5,300 miles southeast, straight into the heart of sun-baked Australia. The Rock might be a former WWE star turned Hollywood icon, but the actual Rock that deserves that title? It's not in a ring or a movie set. It's in Australia. Mount Augustus. And this isn't just a rock. It is the largest rock on the planet. Now, don't let the name trick you one bit. It is not a mountain. It is one colossal slab of stone that towers over 2,300 feet high and spans across a jaw-dropping 28 miles. That is nearly half the size of New York City, just flattened into one giant chunk of rock. It's so massive, you can spot it from nearly 100 miles away. Think that's impressive? Hold on. Mount Augustus has been around for 1.65 billion years. That means this rock was lounging out here long before dinosaurs were even a thing. Long before Julius Caesar ever thought of crossing the Rubicon. So yeah, we're not just talking about a rock. What we have is a time capsule too. Just how cool is that? But let's go somewhere even cooler. From billion-year-old rocks to the belly of the earth, we're diving underground to uncover another silent giant. Back in 1797, a 10-year-old boy named Houchin went hunting. Yeah, it's wild, I know. According to legend, he struck a bear, but the bear didn't go down so easily. So, Houchin chased the wounded beast deep into the woods, until he stumbled upon something even more spine-chilling than the bear, the yawning mouth of Mammoth Cave. Now, whether or not that tale holds up is debatable. But what's not up for debate is that Mammoth Cave is the largest cave system in the world. Since its discovery, it's passed through many hands before officially becoming a national park in 1926. But you know what's wild? Only approximately 400 miles of this gigantic underground cave have been explored so far. To put that into perspective, Mammoth Cave could easily fit 26 Empire State Buildings laid flat along its discovered distance. And get this, scientists believe there are still another 200 miles left untouched. Here's another mind-boggling one. A sea with no coastline sounds made up, right? That's like saying a house with no walls or a roof. But it's real, and it's called the Sargasso Sea. It sits right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, completely surrounded by water. No beaches, no shores, no land at all. Instead, it's held together by ocean currents. The Gulf Stream on one side, the Canary Current on the other, and a couple more doing the rest of the work. You could describe it as the introvert of the SeaWorld. No visitors or surfers. Its only companion besides ocean currents is a whole lot of floating seaweed called Sargasso lying on top of it. And sure, you can tell where the sea got its name from. But now we move on from a sea having no coastline to something that would leave you confused and amazed all at once. You know the whole painter painting himself painting a painting, right? Well, nature's got its own version of that, and it'll leave you scratching your heads. So, in the Philippines, you'll find the world's largest island within a lake on an island within a lake on an island. Am I stressing your brain out yet? Yeah, okay. Let me break it down for you. Vulcan Point is an island in Main Crater Lake, which is on Volcano Island, also known as Taal Island, located in Lake Taal on Luzon Island. Got that? Now it gets even crazier. Vulcan Point is also part of the active Taal volcano. So it's not just the largest island in a lake, it is the largest volcano in a lake on a volcano in a lake on an island. You still following me? Good, because geography's got another twisted one up its sleeve. In Russia, you can say goodnight while someone else is just having breakfast in bed, all within the same country. That's because Russia stretches across 11 time zones. Why so many? It's not about the prime meridian, it's about sheer size. Russia spans a jaw-dropping 160 degrees of longitude, from Europe all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Since each time zone covers roughly 15 degrees, Russia naturally fits into 11 of them. Well, this is what you get when you're a country that covers more than 17 million square kilometers. That's about 11% of all land on Earth. So sunrise in Moscow could mean midnight in Kamchatka. If you pulled up a map to look at Russia's size, well, bravo. But maybe hold that applause, because our next fact might make you question everything you thought you knew about those world maps. You know that objects in mirror are closer than they appear warning? Yeah, maps kind of need something like that too. Take Greenland, for example. It looks almost the same size as Africa, but in reality, Africa's over 14 times bigger. Another example, Alaska often appears larger than Mexico, but Mexico is actually bigger, so what's the deal? It's all thanks to the Mercator projection, a map style that stretches land near the poles to keep shapes and directions accurate. That's why countries closer to the equator look smaller than they are. So while your map does help you get around, don't always trust its sense of scale. It's more artistic than accurate. We're almost wrapping this up, and hey, congrats on making it this far. Now, for these last three, you might want to buckle up. When you're house hunting, one of the first things you check is the water supply, right? Because living where there's no flowing water at all is a big no. But that's just a house. Saudi Arabia is a country, and given its size, it's the largest country in the world that's without a single river. Well, in all fairness, the country is mostly desert and rarely gets any rainfall, so instead of rivers, you'll find dry riverbeds that only fill with water when there's a heavy downpour. Other than that, they've got no permanent flowing river at all. But the country still thrives? How? Well, to get by, Saudi Arabia uses methods like tapping into underground aquifers or even going so far as to import water to keep things running smoothly. Let's leave the Arabian sand dunes behind and head to a continent with one of the coolest maps, but it might not stay that way for long. Remember how continents can actually move? Well, right now, Africa is slowly splitting in two. Right in Eastern Africa, there's a crack in the Earth's crust, which is basically the continent tearing itself apart. They're calling it the Eastern African Rift. This rift has two branches. There's the Eastern Rift running into northern Tanzania, and the Western one, which passes through Uganda, all the way to Mozambique, and is slowly causing the land to separate. Emphasis on the word slowly, so you don't just panic. The process is hardly noticeable, but in millions of years, it is going to create a new ocean between the two parts. It's like Africa is going through the longest natural breakup. Now, for staying with us for this long, the last fact for you to flaunt as an expert brings you right to the center of it all. If you had a giant map of the world and could place a pin right in the center of all the land, where would it land? Well, geographers wanted to, and the answer? Turkey. Specifically near the small town of Kızılderili in central Turkey lies the geographic center of all Earth's landmasses. Now, how did scientists figure this out? Back in 1973, Andrew J. Woods, a physicist with Gulf Energy and Environmental Systems in San Diego, California, used a digital global map and calculated the coordinates to pinpoint this exact location, the balance point of all the Earth's landmasses. To clear things up, it doesn't necessarily mean the center of every single point on Earth, but just rather the simple average central point of all the land on the planet when plotted on a map. So the next time you're visiting Turkey, just know that you're standing in the place where the whole world's landmasses meet. How cool does that sound? Well, that's a wrap for today. But before you go, here's a quick trivia nugget for you. What's the only country in the world that is also a continent? A, Brazil, B, Australia, C, Russia, or D, Canada? Think you know the answer? Let me know in the comments. These geography facts should have you sounding like an expert, but there are plenty more facts people get wrong. Check out our next video, 25 geography facts most people get wrong, so you get to avoid making such blunders. It's a fun one. As always, thanks for watching, like and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe.